Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of A Record of My Father. Today we're talking about acquisitions in legal tech. This is a highly requested episode and something that you've been wanting to do for a while, right?
Yeah, it's basically going to be my experience. I've been through two acquisitions. I wrote about this about 18 months ago. I never published it. The idea came from uh, what is it?
I think it was on somebody LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, Gina Grady. She came up with the idea. She wanted to do an article on it. She was looking, I mean, she was looking more for controversy because that's what you're trying to look for when you're writing something. It's like, what's controversial about the acquisitions that you went through, and I was more focused on what I learned because I'm more of I mean, in any situation in life, you can dish shit on anybody for whatever perceived injustice you but in the end, the best thing to do for me personally is to try to learn from the things that you didn't understand at the time to realize that you didn't understand them. But what I want to do here is I want to kind of lay out. I went through two acquisitions. And I'll tell you the scenario. I'll walk through the acquisitions. I'll tell you how the parties were. There are some of them they're dated. You can tell you. I'll give you the dates, and then at the end, it's sort of I want to make sure that you learn something from this on what to expect if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, that what you would go through if you go from a small company. I mean, we were 15 to 25 million in revenue in both the companies, and we got bought by multi-billion dollar multinationals. So it was a whole new world in process,
I
and a
imagine it's
lot of
incredibly scary as well. You going into this unknown thing. I mean, for somebody who's an entrepreneur selling for the first time, you are
well,
trying not to get screwed over, I imagine, right? And I think
see,
that's
I would,
something.
I would, I would agree. One of the things I would say about the fear thing is that as long as you don't tell them you're frightened and you don't visibly shake, unless you want to say you got Parkinson's or something, unless you can't do that, then you're bad joke. Anyway, I mean,
I laughed. I laughed. Don't worry.
I don't know. Anyway, they don't know, and many of them in both cases, both parties that acquired the company I was at, like I was CEO of Global Securities Information. We were bought by Thomson in 7 of 05, 2005, July 5th, I think. In Intelligize, we were bought by Relx. I was the chief strategy officer. We were bought and I was like the number two or three person, depending upon how you want to look at it, there in the acquisition on in October of 2016. This is a niche space. There's probably 50 companies in legal tech, and there's probably 4 or 5 that have over a billion in revenue. And these guys are those. Those are the ones. Those are the ones that when as an entrepreneur, when you come to the idea that you want to sell your company, you go out and you get your banker, and you have a reasonable accounting firm that does full financial audits, and you have a law firm that's actually ever sold companies before in the industry. When you get to that, these are the people that you will pitch to. Your banker will contact someone at Relx, someone at Kluwer. This is another one. They'll go outside of it into the financial industries, and they'll ask them if they have any interest in entering into the legal tech, because in both cases, the products we were selling were the top. They were the best in the industry. It's something that I've always prided myself in when I went into uh, companies, and when I started companies, and I was in the early part. I think it was in like second or third year at Intelligize. I was at the ground zero with Global Securities Information. It was always the idea that we competed in a market where the competition was really, 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 really big, and they were hated, and they were really expensive. And I can beat any product anytime in that market because I know what levers to pull, and I know what things to do, and I know how to create value. And that's just something that I'm good at. And I proved it multiple times in this space, which is, I guess, unusual in itself. uh, when I think about it, I can kind of give you an overview of what uh, the things, some of the things like we got the first acquisition, Thomson 7, I said in 2005, July. Uh, it was really it was really a wake up for me because I didn't one of the things that I learned I think more than anything else is that I didn't realize that I didn't own the company anymore. And when you sell the company, I mean, they gave us duffel bags full of money, and we were all that happy, and everything was wonderful, and from the financial standpoint. But they had a strategy, and their strategy was something that they were close to the vest on. See, a lot of big multinationals, what they're going to do ultimately with your product is they're going to roll it into their bigger platform, and they're going to let all of their existing salespeople sell it. So so what they're going to do is be able to cut costs and raise the price. What we didn't see that. We thought that we were so great that we could grow on our own and be. I thought that, I would have to say, and I'm sure a few others did, but I didn't know how to get on board with existing management at that time because I had this idea that I remember sitting in a room with the CTO and the meeting's going on and on because I'm arguing over the new products and stuff like that, and he looks at me and he goes, "My God, you got to shut up." And I'm like, "What? You got to shut up." And I looked at him because I'm kind of like, wow, that's kind of harsh. But I didn't say that. I just kind of was like, and he says, you act like you care. Stop it. Just let the meeting end and go on. Come in every day, work your 8 hours, go home. You'll make plenty of money and everything will be fine. You're just dragging it out with arguing with people that have, and he said, already decided what they're going to do before they walked in the room with you. And I was like,
That
that's
is
when
a
I
big
got it.
wake up call. I think you did talk about
That's when
the
I got,
superficialness of a lot of the meetings
well,
and going in
see,
and having a different
see,
perspective on it.
right. We were all about global securities information was like, we want the best product on the market. We want everybody to be happy, blah, 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 blah. Well, Thomson comes along and they're like, well, we bought you for tons of millions of dollars. We want we want to recoup our investment, which they did. And that's the thing I would say about both acquisitions. I talked to senior management multiple years after, and they said, we made a lot of money on the company, on your company that we bought. They did. Both in both cases. So they were happy. We were happy because they paid us a lot of money on both acquisitions. They were very good. They were not penny pinchers in any way. They didn't withhold anything. They didn't screw us on our holdout or our set asides or anything like that. They were in both cases financially they were there. They were good. Uh, that being said, their strategy, what I feel is their strategy, I never got it directly communicated to me, but what they saw is we had a product that was $2 a minute, it was $10 to sign on to, and they converted it into, uh, in the course of 4 years, an $18 a minute product, which is about a 700% increase in price. They changed the name, very minor stuff in the platform, and that's what and the strategy for them was to wring out all of the value they possibly could out of this asset for the money that they paid, and then take what was left and roll it into the bigger, Westlaw
I
application
see.
and have it be sold and used by all the different people. So that was the strategy. That's what I believe was the strategy. I never got it communicated that I knew. And I think if I had, I think that's the one piece of advice I would give them is I would say communicate your strategy to your C-level executives earlier. And if they can't handle it, like they don't want, if they don't see, I think there's a big frightening thing that the multinationals, when they buy a company, they're like, everybody identifies with Phil. Everybody identifies with the C-level guys there because we've been, in the face of the customers and all that. So if they tell us, hey, by the way, we're going to wipe your company out in 4 years and we're going to absolve it, a lot of people can't stand by and watch what they built be taken apart stick by stick.
That's
It's a
kind of the
hard thing to do.
segue that I was going to get into as well as
But
you wrote here a number of your staff never wanted to work for a big company, so they will leave.
right.
And
Yeah.
I think at the same time there's also the duality where you have Thomson that also let a lot of people go that didn't fit
Right.
with
They didn't fit into
yeah,
I mean, the first thing they did is
the puzzle piece.
we had like we were a level, we had a tier below us, and then what they did is they cut out the tier below us, they added their people there, and then they mashed us into it. So then I was at the same level as the people that used to report to me, which is neither here nor there. Uh, they had certain things that I disagreed with in their strategy and all that stuff. But remember, I know it for, $20 million company. They know it for a multi-billion dollar company. I'd have never run a multi-billion. I've never run $100 million, $200 million company, So I didn't know why they would do what they did. And I think if there was some, and I guess the question is they probably wouldn't have thought I would be reasonable because a lot of times they had acquisitions where they acquired somebody and then they told him what they're going to do. And then he just got all shitty and left and tried to start his own company and then had to go through a lawsuit. And then the money gets dirty. And then he goes after the customers and the customers just want to wash their hands of everybody, which that's a horrible, horrible situation because you don't find that entrepreneurs are people that can work with a bigger group and can give up control. That's a hard thing to do. Whereas I was sort of like, well, let's do what's best for everyone.
Gotcha.
But I
Which
was only
isn't
there. I was
always
there,
going to work for a multi-billion dollar
right.
company.
But I mean, the one thing I had to do, come home every day, and then I could sleep on my, duffel bags full of money and say, it didn't matter.
Hmm.
I retired shortly thereafter for the first time I retired when I was 45, and I was retired for 5 years because of them or that acquisition or what we had built and sold. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can slice it and dice it, but that's what they did. And that allowed me to go to your first grade through fifth grade, uh,
Yeah.
you know, at elementary school and be the guy that was your room mother, your assistant coach, and everything that you ever did and see everything that you did in your youth. I would never have gotten to do that if I'd worked for a regular company, if I'd continued to work at Global Securities Information. I would have still been working 12 hours a day. And I would have increased and we would have done all sorts of things and blah blah blah. And we would have stayed ahead and all this and the business would have been my thing. But then that gave me the chance, you know, to actually look at you and learn about what was really important in life. Because I was chain smoking cigarettes at 3 o'clock in the morning within a month of being acquired. It was a harrowing experience because I'd walk around in the yard late at night and the wife would hear me get up and then and then I go out and just because I was just thinking about like this, that, the other, you know, and even up to it, I was the presenter. I think we did 30 or 40 presentations. And a presentation that you do was we had 45 or 50 slides, maybe 60. Uh, I was the lead on the presentation. You're in a room where you have a gridiron. You know what a football
Like a
goalie post
semicircle.
is? Like this. And this here is where all of the competitors or all of the people that are questioning you are standing right here and you present to them. I present to them that my presentation was an hour. Uh, Usually it took 4 hours.
Oh wow.
They, my partners were behind me, and what would happen is I was the talking head because I'm really good at that.
No, you're not really
I can
good
do
at
that,
that.
but my partners are much smarter than me. So when a question would come up and I didn't know what the answer was, which was quite frequently, I would turn and I would say, "And what do you think, Nick? Or what do you think, Richard? Or what do you think, Holden?" And then they would answer the question, and then I'd look back. And here's another thing. Remember that I am a very big predator when it comes to business. I am the person that I don't do anything illegal, but I will take your best people. We will develop the best product. We will crush you. We will take all of your customers. We will earn them away from you. We will grow and you will die in the dust. That is the way I approach it. So I am doing this. I'm opening up my guts to people that I hated.
Where did
And I
your
did this.
predatory actions come from? Where do you think that was rooted in? Do you think it came from your youth, or do you think it?
probably a little
somewhere
bit,
else.
you live and learn how you're gonna survive in certain environments, and that was good. But I think in business, I found that you had to decide what you wanted and you had to go after it. You couldn't expect. I found time and time again, and I learned this lesson over and over and over, and I still have to learn it again and again and again, is that somehow I think that if I don't clearly communicate what I want from someone, that it'll be magically given to me. And a lot of times it's very hard to communicate, I want to do this and this is what I want and this is what the salary is and this is what I want to get, and to say that directly to someone. It's very difficult to do that
Oh,
if it's a
incredibly.
superior or it's someone that's got your future in their hand or something like that. So you're very kind of willy-nilly about it, and you'll never get it if you don't communicate it.
To
They may
piggyback
see
off of
you
that,
as hard.
yeah,
What?
I was gonna say to
I don't
piggyback off of that, I think you realize as well that you weren't gonna make it from a startup point of view if you were copying a second-rate product and you weren't making the best product, right? I
Yeah.
don't think
Well,
that
I
you were
work.
going to get to the place that you wanted to be eventually by doing that, by making a lackluster product
Right. Well,
and
that's the
not being
interesting thing
predatory.
is like when I talk about the different strategies that Thomson at the time in '05, and the senior management there, most of the people there that were involved with me at all are all gone, and they've retired or whatever. But they knew what they wanted to develop. They developed what they wanted to develop, and they didn't look to the outside world. They were not eyeing the competition. They were monitoring it, but they weren't eyeing it for the future. Whereas when I first started at Relx, I think that they heavily monitor the competition, and we're always like, what's happening, what's happening, what's happening. I know Kluwer does the same thing. And I think that if you're a small company, if you're any company, and I decide that, hey, Zach's ahead of me, he's doing this, I got to develop what he's doing. And it's like, well, if Zach is launching a glass of water today, I can't build and launch a glass of water for 2 years or even 16 or 15 months. So whatever I'm working on that gets set to the side doesn't get finished. And, when things don't get finished, it takes, you lose about 50% of the productivity trying to get the developers to go back to it. Because then you'll have a new set of developers and there'll be different eyes looking on it going like, I can't believe they coded this shit this way, and then you got to redo it all. It's just, it's a nightmare to switch things and switch people from projects to projects. It's better to have your small teams and have them start, middle, end, you know, but you also got to have competent people at the top that say, do this and stick with it when you start to. And then when the salespeople come in and the marketing people come in and they all say stuff like, well, Bob Johnson across the street, they're our competitor and they're beating our ass because they have doors or they have tech search or they have email or they have this. And it's like, you need to do that right now. And then your director of sales comes in, we can't hit the number because we don't have this feature. And you're like, okay, we could do that feature, but that'll take 6 months and then they'll come out with something else. And then you'll be at my door saying, I don't have that next feature. And then we will be following them.
Mm.
And we will always be 6 months back and we'll never catch up and we'll lose. You have to chart a path. You have to sit down and say, 3 years from now, where you want to be, 4 years from now, where you want to be. I had the old CTO from Global was very, very good at strategy on saying, well, where do you want to be in 4 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And that's where I kind of learned the whole strategic thinking. It's like, if I want to be at the top of my driveway at 5 o'clock, I have to start walking out the door by 4:55. And I have to go out certain doors. I shouldn't go out the back door because I'll be going, I can't walk there by going across the creek and around. I can ultimately get there, but I have to go there's like a path. And each one of those things that goes along the path that make you get to that destination is like those are incredibly important to monitor and to do, and to come back and say you did a shitty job, let's do better, or you did a great job, that's wonderful, here's a party, something like that that moves you towards a goal. And that's the
Checking the
that
boxes
I
along the way, right? I think that's what you're getting at.
exactly, because if you don't do it and you don't do, I mean, that's the one plan that I think about when I was in Intelligize and we said where we wanted to be in 5 years, and we were there. I love to look back at that.
It's
And,
a nice
we sat down,
breath of
we
fresh
sat
air.
down as a group and we planned all this stuff out. And it was not little stuff. It was huge stuff. And it was like, what was we call it a BHAG, your big hairy objective or whatever it was. And we set it years in the future. And in a perfect world, we would be doing this. And we did, and we achieved, and it was just, you know,
I just had a quick question. So you have on this the lessons that you learned. Well, I'm looking at a sheet right now that you
yeah.
typed up, and it says you will compete for product dollars. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by
Well,
compete
I mean,
for
the
product
interesting thing
dollars?
is that when you're, whether I never was involved in that process at Thomson, I was there only a very short time. I was, as I said, I think I learned a great deal about what not to do when I was at Thomson. Uh, I didn't, I didn't, I didn't realize that my opinions didn't really matter to anybody but myself in my immediate little circle. That trying to move outside of it. I think that the thing that they did that was really, really good that I think about is they showed me the organization, and I got a feel and an interaction across the whole organization. I got to meet everybody, and I saw people at many, many different levels, and I thought that was a really good thing to do. I think the thing I didn't realize there, as well as it relates, that if you look at something that they could do, but I don't know how they could. I can't figure out a way to fix a problem, so I'm just going to throw the problem out there. Is that the competition, the internal competition between divisions, is at least, and if not more, competitive than it is with outside competitors. I mean, I remember specific instances where we were buying data and we had 8 other divisions that were buying, or areas that were buying the same data from the same vendor, and we would not buy, or like, and they could have bought it once and shared, but they wouldn't do that. So we were paying $900,000 for data that we could have got for 80 grand, the
From a
whole
competitor.
company as a whole. And
Okay.
but we were too angry to deal with. It would be like, you and I living in the same house, and we only use cars at off times, and
So you don't have to
we
deal with the other person. Is that what you're
and
kind of getting
right,
at?
exactly. And
Okay.
no, we didn't trust you, and you would rip us off, and it would affect us in a negative way, or you might be able to save money, and if it made your bottom line better, then that was detrimental to us.
I think it's an aspect of
Because,
subservience as well. I think that
well,
there's
I think
me
that, no, there's
bowing
compet
down.
well, remember that if you're a division and I'm a division of the same company, the way you were measured is in the top line revenue and a number of other metrics. Each division is measured. And if I give you a way to spend less, I'm going to make one of your ratios better, right?
Yeah.
And I don't take anything, I'm going to make you look better than me. And if you look better than me next year when money's being handed out for product, remember we were talking about this? I'm going to get less because those people are spending it more efficiently. Okay? Bingo. That's it in a nutshell. And you're internally competitive because you're talking about product dollars, happiness factor, interaction, all that other kind of stuff that you will get as a top performing division.
Okay.
But I don't know how to make that competition still be there and yet not have people not make the right financial decision. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
I don't know how to say that.
That might be kind of
It's a
similar
hard
to
thing.
this other lesson that you learned. It's not as predatory as it sounds. However, it is predatory. What do you mean by
Right. Well,
that?
the thing
Yeah,
is
that's kind of similar
it's
to what
not
you're
like
talking
people
about.
are not like people are going like, it's Phil Brown. I'm gonna kill him. I'm out to get him. I'm out to get him. No, it's sort of like, uh, oh, he wants that data. Sure. I'll put him on my schedule for next month because I don't have time this month. And then next month you meet, and then well, this is just a preliminary discussion to get access. We'll talk about more of a finalized. We need to know what you want.
In 2 months, right?
So you
And schedule
waited
another
30
one.
days, just yeah, and we did this at one for 18 months to get data, and it was just like, and the other one was like, we had a number to hit in the first year. Thomson, we had a number to hit in the first year. We could have made it internally data wise just by consolidating all the Edgar feeds under one purchase. because it was like, I think it was almost 2 million. And it was so much. And I couldn't get my head around the fact that we wouldn't just buy one and that we could reuse. And there were no restrictions on reusing the data. So it wasn't like we were violating rules, but they wouldn't do it, you know?
Because
I
of
mean, there's
that
lots of things,
predatory
but
aspect.
also remember that my ideas were, it wasn't one sided. It wasn't like, wow, it's all Zach's fault. No, everybody was competing for the thing. And remember that they were beating everybody in the marketplace at that point. They were Thomson was in '05 was the company to be because they were at the top of the food chain. They had bigger price increases, but they had better products. And so they were very competitive. They were very competitive externally and they were very competitive internally. It was amazing. I love that. I love that environment. I loved it, but also I could see where there was waste. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, hey, you can always pick little holes in things, but they were working really, really, really well then. So you have to go like, you know. I mean, I've seen this in organization after, and I would say a number of things I've seen at Relx that were the same. But once again, it's like, okay, Phil, so what's the answer? And the answer is, I think it works best that way, you know, to have people sort of be competitive for resources and competitive for numbers. And I mean, and it's nice to say that, hey, if we buy one feed of data, that we use it and we share it with everyone because we paid an initial fee and we could distribute the costs across all. But the problem is that every one of the divisions wants the data first. They want to deal directly with the vendor because they have specifics that they want, and they don't want to have you come in second and say this. And then if I'm working for me and you have 17 other specs that I need that needs to go into the data, I'm going to be like, yeah, we'll get to that. I want mine. See? So it's almost better in many ways to have everybody get their own shit, pay for their own shit, and be done with their own shit, you know.
Gotcha.
But as far as just purely economic, it looked like from the guy that was there like what 6 months, from the outside looking in, that it was a big thing. I would say some of the things I learned there is what was it there? I hadn't learned the lesson about shut your mouth and listen. I was really vocal. I spoke at every meeting. I questioned people who were presenting products because I was very interested in learning. And that was most presentations there were not for my benefit or knowledge. They were more as a notification that this is what we're doing. And I'm more of a collegial being from an entrepreneur spirit. We would present something or we would talk about something, and then everybody would spitball and say what they thought. And, if you told me my idea was bad, I would say, well, you're wrong, and here's why. And then you would say, well, no, Phil, but what about this? That offsets that. And then, I mean, this is the way I've been taught to build really good products, is to be open to criticism and to be able to defend criticism. Not that, hey, you got a blue shirt, it's ugly and you're fat. Yeah, that's fine. But the product, okay, you can insult my being, my dead mother, all that kind of stuff like that. But when it came to the product, it was just like, well, but remember, you and I, we're on the same team and we're trying to sell something in a marketplace that we're trying to make money from. So if I'm weak, you need to expose that weakness and I have to prove you wrong. And if I can't prove you wrong, how the hell am I going to prove a customer?
I
I
think when
mean,
you're
think about
acquired
this.
too, you do a lot more talking up too,
Right.
right? About the
Well, that was
product,
the thing
which
that's the
isn't
thing I
really,
learned
it's something to
there.
get used to, right? Yeah.
They were very, very good at reporting up. Thomson was just amazing at reporting up. I think that they walk through process after process. But remember, we had a CEO come in and show us the whole, and it wasn't anybody at Global. Somebody came in and sat on top of Global, and that was the person that showed us how to report up. That's the one that introduced everybody. He was sort of our shield, but also he stopped things from getting to us, so we didn't know the whole picture. So there was multi things like
How
that.
did that feel when you had I don't know, maybe a withdrawal from freedom to how you could speak about the product that you actually made yourself? How
I
does that
left.
feel? You left? Is that
I left.
okay?
I mean,
And
that was my
and
response.
what was the time period in which you left
Uh, well,
after being acquired?
I mean, I started to try to get exited within 45 days. I had a 3 year.
Was
I had
this
a
the
3 year
second time or was this the first time?
no, first time. First time
First
with
time.
Thomson. I had a 3 year, I think a 3 year non-compete. And I think that I did uh I just I just did not fit. And I was the square peg and they were the round hole. And I just and that's when I really started smoking more. That's when I was like walking around at night, and I was worried about everything and this, that, and the other. And then I was siloed. I was only allowed to do marketing now or sales. I think I forgot. I got taken away from product. And we used to all have our fingers involved in everything. So you could see the complete picture. And now I couldn't see the complete picture of the company anymore. It was being held back. So it was very different. And that was the way that they worked. They worked on a silo system that, hey, you do product's all you do, everything's product. You don't have to go to Phil, who's over in sales, and ask him anything. You can if you want, but you don't have to, and you don't have to report to him. You don't have to tell him anything. And so it was a very different structure.
You don't have a
So,
hands-on approach anymore.
right. Well, before
Gotcha.
I could just go in and say, so what's going on? What are we making? Where are we going? Why are we doing that?
Mhm.
I mean, when you say, why are you building something? And the answer is because we want to. That's not a,
It's not the answer
you
you
know,
want, right?
because
Uh,
because the market wants it or something vague like that, and you're just like,
because it
this
looks
is
like this
not.
other product, right?
It
Because
didn't
it
it
looks
didn't
like this
work.
other
Well,
way.
see, that was the thing where a new person comes in and sits at the top and runs the company. Okay. And that was the first acquisition. That was Thomson. Uh, they made money. We made money. I learned a lot. I would say that uh, they told me the stories when they communicated strategy early to people that the CEOs would torpedo the product development then, and it's like I understand why they wouldn't. So I guess that I have to just bite my tongue and say they did it well because they made money in it and it worked for them and it worked into their strategy. One of the things I would say is that it's gone down in history and known as the biggest mistake and the quickest destroying of any company that they bought. I mean, that was a big deal. They bought us and then raising the price and cutting customer support and wiping out all the different levels and bringing in people to sit. They they made the market angry, but the market couldn't leave because the product was so good. And what they really did is they monetized the goodwill, and that's where they made all their money. We could have been charging $8, $10 a minute then, but we weren't. We had people anxious to use our product and they did not question it. They were like, it's the best. It's the best in the market.
Do you mean monetizing goodwill by the relationship of which you had with the customers? Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Exactly. Whereas like uh Relx was on a completely different thing. They were like, oh my God, you guys, we had this I forgot what it is. There's a gauge on what customers think of your product and your brand. And we are off the charts. We are like right at Apple level with IntelliGeyes. Really, really, it's the HIX score, something like that. It's just it is very well loved. This is up until I left 2020. I was there 2016 to 2020. So and I was there. Same thing. I was not in on the presentations. Todd, the CEO, Hicks did the presentations, but he would tell me about, what was this, what was in the presentation. They would ask me questions, but I didn't have any like direction other. But I learned about the bankers. I mean, the first banker we had, they gave us a price and we accepted it, and they told us what to do and we listened to what they said. The second banker we had, our VC went in and beat the hell out of them and got a lower price. I mean, we paid a third of what we paid from the first one. The accounting fees, same thing. Legal fees, they do a fixed legal fee transaction cost for what is that? Uh, uh, it was just amazing. It was half of what our original legal bill was, and Global was sold for a lot less than IntelliGeyes was.
How did you go about finding a banker for this?
Uh,
How
the
how does
first
that
one we
work?
did because we had created a relationship with him over years and years, and he
Oh,
was known in the
okay.
industry, and he was a good person, and he
Mhm.
was decent, and he's a Marine, and
Trustworthy.
just yeah, exactly. He had all the qualities. He was a hard ass, but he was fair, very very much like my partner Richard. He was hard ass, but really fair, huge. I mean, one of the key elements in any person or partnership or thing that I look for is integrity, the ability to believe what you say, do what you say, and say what you do, that kind of stuff like that. That sort of trumps all your other stupid
I think
qualities,
any
you
facet of
know?
life, yeah, relationships,
Yeah.
business or
And
otherwise. Yes.
the other guy came along and we got introduced and he was just, I'll get it. I'll get it. I'll get it. I'll get this number. Oh no. And the first banker was like, we can give you a number in this range. And the other guy comes in and goes, we'll go 20 million higher. And you're like, and I'm thinking like, that's nuts. And he doesn't get paid if he doesn't get it. And he gets more than 20 million higher. And you're like, I wish that guy was around. He was a go-getter and they were crazy good. And
Mhm.
they were like, hey, it's only 2 a.m. Don't be a pussy. Let's get to work. That. And he was in UK and we were here. It was like they were really, really, really over the top good with stuff. The other ones were so amazing at setting the meetings because we did all in-person meetings. The first one, we did meetings at like the Westin downtown in DC and like Thomson brought 25 people, Relx brought 25 people. I sat in a room in the goalpost thing and they just battered me with questions. And they just kept asking, what about 3 years ago? And da, 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 you had this and that and the other and blah 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 blah, and your development, where's your offshore? How do you do this? How do you do that? And just boom, 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 boom. 4 hours. I mean, when you walk out of there, you are on a high for about 30 minutes, and then you're like, your whole body's exhausted. And then you say to yourself, "Oh shit, I have another one."
So you would do
You know,
multiple meetings a day
two in a
for
day,
these, two
two
in a
two a
day.
day,
Okay,
no
so
more than
eight
two a day.
hours worth of.
Otherwise,
Okay, gotcha.
8 hours worth of meetings with about a 90-minute break in the middle. It was just crazy. It
How long
started
did
at
this
8.
period go on for?
That
This
was three
four shoot,
weeks.
three
You
weeks.
know,
Oh wow.
it was
Okay,
like three
gotcha.
weeks, pretty much solid. And then we didn't do any presentations online. I went to places. I went to New York. I think I went to Boston. I went to a lot of people from the Midwest came and visited, and we presented to them. I mean, there was interest in a lot of different unusual places that came to us, you know. But there was also, I mean, we had, and with the first acquisition, we had one of the big companies violated the non-disclosure. This is an interesting thing. They violated the non-disclosure because one of their people that was in the meeting that was asking me questions, his buddy worked on our staff. And after the meeting, they called him and said, we're on the block and for sale, and told this guy that we were for sale. And we're like, and then we asked the banker, and this is the funny thing about that. And the banker said, well, we can go after them for violating it, clearly violating the non-disclosure, which you're not supposed to tell anybody. You have a confidential information memorandum. You're hearing a lot of confidential information. You're not supposed to tell anybody else, and you're certainly not supposed to tell anybody of my company because my company was unaware that we were being sold, and it's usually a big deal. And so, but he immediately comes and tells us and says that we're for sale, and we're like, well, being for sale, we're always for sale. We've been for sale. You do the whole backpedal and all that kind of stuff, and that creates a whole bunch of issues in the company. But we had given everybody options. We had another plan on top of that for tenure. So a lot of people did really well.
That's great.
It wasn't just the top people there. And Telegize, we had, I think everybody at the top did well. I don't think we had any spread out options or
The
anything like
trickle.
that or dollar bonuses. There wasn't anything like that.
I think another question I was going to ask is, so you talked about how your life changed upon the first acquisition. After that, seeing me grow up, how did your life
Yeah.
change after the second acquisition? Was that when you
Well,
really discovered that you were gonna be retired? I don't know.
yeah, that
And
was
what was
that was a
that?
hard road, but I should talk more about the second acquisition because
Yeah.
the difference, here's the difference. We get bought in like October of 2016. They keep our team intact, right? So all the people that were in charge before are in charge now. And they throw down a sheet of paper that we wrote that said we could do this, this, and this, and we could hit these numbers. And he goes, hit those numbers. I mean, he added some stuff to it, but basically he took the shit paper that we wrote that said we could do this. If you buy us, we can make $1 billion. And he's like, okay, I'm buying you. Okay, I'm not going to here make $1 billion, which is pretty cool, you
Yeah.
know. And
That's a higher level of freedom than what you had on the first one.
oh my God,
Oh
it
my
was
God,
I
that's
would
night
say
and
it was
day.
crazy. It was they introduced us. We had to learn more how to interact with the other divisions within Relx. But that amount of autonomy was wicked cool because we were all high performers and we were all know-it-alls. We being I'm pointing the finger at me, not
Mr.
everybody else.
Hawaiian
I
shirt.
Well, it took me a long time to realize that when your voice is really loud and you ask a lot of questions, that some would say it's overbearing, some would say it's threatening. Which I mean, I'm always shocked when people tell me that. Well, he was threatening me, and I'm like, well, you had a really stupid idea, and I started questioning it. Why did you question my idea in front of all those people? Because you presented it in front of all these people and asked for questions. Well, but they weren't supposed to be so mean that I couldn't answer them. And you're just like,
Sounds like you had a bad defense. I don't know. That's
yeah,
kind of what it
yeah.
sounds
Well,
like to
no,
me.
you don't. The thing is you don't. What you really want to do when you ask a question is, I want to elicit thought. I want you to come back and say why that is not true if it's something that could be damaging, or and how you've mitigated and how you've thought about it through. But if you haven't thought it through, I would say, I didn't know that. I mean, you're right. We should take that and we'll look into that and we'll get back to you. I mean, because I had exactly that after we were bought. We were in a conference room. We were talking. I developed this thing, council, whatever. It was a dashboard for corporate counsel, and it was all the corporate securities information they wanted. I had it. It was really wicked cool. Everything was there. We had all of our people going around, and they're all like cooing, because I'm really loudmouth and I'm really pushy and all that kind of shit like that, as everybody on this thing knows. But I do this, and then of all people, marketing, she pings me, and she goes, "I don't know," and I'm like looking at her, I'm going like, "What do you? I mean, that's kind of like an objection, but not really an objection." Well, I don't think that any GC of any public company is going to spend very much time, if any, looking at a screen on any given day. That's how the room was. Because they were all like, they had already said it was a great idea and they were willing to build it and fund it. And they all looked at me. And this is what I remember, but it's probably much quicker than this. I was like, fuck, you're right. So we didn't develop it.
Gosh.
But it was just like,
Poignant question asking, yeah.
and and of all the people that would ask it, I mean, of all the people that could tell me I was wrong, the last person I would ever listen to is marketing. And she was right on. It would have wasted, it would have a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of put together, a whole lot of sales stuff, and it would have failed. And she was right, because that wouldn't be what they would do. That
No.
would be targeted for some lower level person, so it saved us a ton, I believe. And but it also it I learned a lot from that listening to, and that's, I've always kind of been that way. I like to listen to people, and I think that I get worried because I'm really loud, and when I'm very passionate about things, and when I'm really passionate, people think that I'm so passionate that if they question my passion, that I will kill them because I'm in a position of power, and you don't most people don't speak ill to those over them, whereas I don't give a shit. I will tell you what I think, and I would always do that. I
That's something that
remember,
you taught me that is very, very valuable is to always
yeah, and
be a
yeah,
soundboard, even no
right,
matter where you are in the certain hierarchy, and that you
yeah,
shouldn't put
and
your
you don't
ego
have to do it in
before
a
everything
rude
else.
way. You don't have
No.
to, and I think that my biggest thing is I need to learn, and over time, is to learn how to ask questions in a manner that does not make people feel threatened. But I was there, Thompson. It's 45 days when I first started discussing. It took me, I didn't get out for 6 or 7 months. Uh, I started October of 2016. I didn't leave until the end of 2020. And I would tell you that my time there was, I learned so much. I used to go to New York for the 10 years that I was there. I commuted first it was like once a month, then it was twice a month, then it was three times a month, then it was for a couple days, one day a week, couple days a week, one day a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, one day. I mean, just
Yeah, it got up to a pretty
and
high frequency there. I remember you going on the I think it was Yacela, and we
yeah,
would drop you off at there, and then you were driving, and then you stopped driving there because you were going there so often, and it
yeah,
was
it
like,
was
yeah,
just easier to Uber.
yeah,
And then, but the people there that I interacted with, and the whole idea that I would go into a room of developers, and this is the coolest thing, and we'd have products that everybody was kind of working on, and I had semblances of ideas that I worked that like we had an accounting product that I knew a little bit about, and we had a M&A product that I knew a little, and you would see the people working on the features that were they're doing it right there. And it was on the Relx, eighth floor. We're at the Helmsley building, which is like overlooking, it's the most expensive, one of the most expensive buildings in there. It's gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous space. But I'd sit in there and I'd come up. And this is the thing I think about when people talk about remote work. There were four, five, six developer people there. One, what is it? Screen maker. I don't know what you call them.
like front end.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. And and I would just go, what are you doing? And then I'd say, why? And they explain. And I'd say, well, why are you doing it that way? And then they'd tell me. And then I'd say, well, what about that? And then they'd say, well, I'm doing this because of this. Oh, well, what about that? And I would ask lots of pertinent questions because I knew things. And I would say, why are you putting the button that says enter over here instead of where it is over there on all the others? And it's like, well, because so and so from Global said do it. And I would say, like, I don't that I want to argue with that moving of the button, that every single time we've ever had the enter button, it's been on the left hand side. Now we're going to put it on the right hand side, only for this application, not for any other. I said that
that's
I'm very
strange.
much I'm up. I mean, well, I'm being, what do you call it? It wasn't like that. It was usually like they would reorder the items that you searched on the left hand
And I think
screen.
consistency is the game that you're playing as well.
Exactly.
Something
Well, see,
ergonomics and consistency for
but here's the
a web
thing:
page. Yeah.
if you're doing M&A search, you want to search. There's certain things that you want to search. Then, and if you're in another database and you're doing public offerings, there's certain things that you want to search. And you would think that your search terms should, if you have three things that everyone searches, those should be the first three boxes. But sometimes those boxes are box number 8 on M&A, but it's number 2 on public offerings, and then it's in regulatory, it's like 12. So we were very much into, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 through 17. They're all the same. Everybody picks. So once you learned it once, you may have to screen down to get to that button. Then they made the idea of you could move the buttons around if you wanted to, which that made people happy. But up until that point, once you learned it, everybody learned it. And this is where we got the whole idea. And I learned so much from so many people there. Just that interaction to sit down and talk to them and them tell me why, and I would ask things. And shockingly, I could actually ask intelligent questions, and I give people good ideas. And but remember, I didn't have to execute them, so I just say, hey, and they go, shitty idea, and I go like, no, shitty execution.
Always turn it around on.
No, the thing is that that's the one thing I learned in leadership. One
No,
thing
we
you should
joke. We're
always do in
joking.
leadership. No, if you get if it's a bad idea, eat it and shut up. Eat it, swallow it, and move on. If it's a good idea, uh, uh, spread the credit as much as you possibly can.
Well, that's what you
I
say
would
here
always do
is that
this.
bad news does not get better with time. Is
Yeah.
that's also
Well,
written on the lessons learned, and I think that that's
yeah.
kind of what you're getting
When
at
I
as
when I
well.
think about that, I look at some of the stuff. I haven't read it all. I mean, when I look back, the inefficiencies in the divisions, I would like to figure out a way to do that. But I got to be honest, that competition's really good. But then I see where where one they did really really well by bringing in their people, driving it the way they wanted to drive it, and doing very well. And then another one is like, no, you drive it, and we drove it and made a bunch of money for them, and they were very happy. And we kept this. I've forgotten it's something score. It's not your HIV score. It's some score that measures your employees and your brand and all that kind of stuff
Oh,
like
I
that.
know what you're referring to. I'm not sure what it's called though.
We were in the 70s, so it was amazing. But anyway, uh, that the they let the company do what it wanted to do for multiple years and hit numbers every quarter, every year, not spending what we said we would spend. I mean, there was oversight and it got tighter and tighter. We had internal competition. We had all sorts of things like that. We looked at acquisitions and there was troubles there. But, most of it was, uh, you find out in your life, and I think the reason I left, when I kind of look back with this huge holistic look from Relics, because I really like working there. That was fun. There was just so much, it was good. I think that the reason I did is because I worked at Thomson and I knew and I understood where the mistakes that I made when I was there, and that I could not make those ones again when I worked at Relx. So when I walked in, I'd try to figure out whether or not you've already decided what you're going to do, and you're just getting me to accept and buy in, or you actually want me to help you or tell you.
I think part of
Those
it
are
too is the first time you were acquired is you saw what it could become, and then the second time you saw
yeah.
what it did prior and where it kind of got into this, I don't know, this toxic
Mhm.
environment, this toxic working environment, and it didn't become that the second time. And I think that you were
Right.
you were happy.
Oh
You were
yeah.
happy with that.
Well, yeah, and I was
Yeah.
still working with the same people I worked before, and we were kind of in the same position, only that there was one report up, which I didn't have to, we would go and sit in front of the thing and talk to the CEO, and we would, basically kiss his ring and, give him the quarterly things that this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it, and this is how we're doing it. And we would show him new big products and stuff like that. And he was always interested in certain things about us that we were doing better than anyone else in the company, which to me is what the CEO should do. I would look through my portfolio of companies and things or divisions and say, well, what is Zach's team doing that's better than anybody else? What is Bilbo Baggins' team? And which teams are doing nothing but shit? And that would be the way that I would figure out how to put it all together into a deck of cards that all work together and made the company and the shareholders ultimately, because that's what you're there for, you know, make them wealth. Because it doesn't matter. I mean, some could argue that the customer doesn't matter. It's really about the shareholder wealth. But then from our standpoint and my standpoint in the business I've been in, if we made the customer happy, the shareholder wealth came exponentially, you know. So that was sort of the thing that was always, you know, take away the support. And you're like, but the customers love that. But it cost 8,000, you're 60,000 or whatever it did. And you'd be like, yeah, but you know, you can't tie it to the exact dollar amount, 5% more that you got. But you could tell people, the support went to hell. I mean,
Finding that
you
sweet medium between cost
it's hard.
effective but also satisfying
And
the
also, and
yeah.
also remember, we're like a 20, 30, 15, whatever $1 million company. And this is a 3, $4 billion division. So we basically are their toilet paper bill. So we are not. And we may be growing at a half a roll of toilet paper a year, which is a lot of toilet paper. You grow at 10 million toilet papers, but frankly, it's 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 one step lower than a rounding error. You know, we didn't have an effect. We had no technically, we were positive and we were positive and we grow. And the question is that could you take a company that's growing at 30, 40%? Because that's what we were doing in 20, 30, 40, all the years that I was there. And also at, I think we were 15, 18, 20 at Thomson, is that could you take that and make a multinational grow at that level? Because that's the Googles. That's the trick, to get to the multi-billion-dollar quarter. But
Well, now the
space isn't
Starbucks
that big.
CEO. What did the Starbucks CEO or did he move from Chipotle to Starbucks? He did, yeah. And they're paying him like $45 million a year. That's crazy. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, he was the number two guy, and he
Number two
Well,
guy at
yeah,
Chipotle,
see,
yeah,
I
and
would
then number
argue
one at
that
Starbucks now,
when
yeah.
he left, I mean, when I look at that particular situation, he came in and the whole idea that he's commuting by plane and then telling people they have to be in the office is of just that's really bad optics to
It's
walk in that way. That to me is poor something.
what do you mean? He's
That's very
commuting.
poor.
He's commuting. He's in
No,
the
no, no. But
office.
that's
I don't know what you're
very
talking
no.
about.
But they're paying for his private jet, so
Oh
that
yeah.
to me is that's
I
very
was being
poor.
sarcastic. Yes.
That's very bad on that.
Oh
Also,
yeah.
I would say that if you look at Chipotle, the revenue that they had during those years that he was so magical in, if you were to actually tie it to the price increases, and they did a certain number of things, they added a number of elements, but I don't want to say that he used the goodwill in a lot of ways, because Chipotle now, it's kind of the same when you look at a Five Guys burger. When it was $5, and if I went in there and you were saying it's not growing fast enough, and I just raised the burgers to 10, maybe 5% of the people would leave, but the revenue would triple.
I remember
And you'd
when
be
a
like,
bowl was
wow,
ten
you made a
dollars.
lot more
Yeah.
money. And I'd be like, yeah, but we lost 10% of our market. And some other asshole's going to come along and eat that. And then he's going to use that money to grow. And then he's going to come in and he's going to fight with us. And,
I think even now when I go
that
into
asshole would be
Chipotle,
me.
I see different demographics. I used to
Yeah.
see people getting lunch and now it's very what is it now? It's like $17, $15.
Yeah. Well, I saw old
Crazy.
people getting
Old people
uh,
before. Now there's no more old
lunch and
people
dinner,
there. Yeah.
there. They would get a dinner and it would last for the 2 days.
Yeah.
And they would yell at the people behind the counter to, you can give it one more scoop. You can give it one more scoop,
You talked to
but
me about that. I remember that.
that was so sad. That was sad. Uh, so we've talked about my experiences, and there's lots of other tidbits of information that I've learned from both of them. I would say that the Thomson side, if I've shat on any past managers, so be it. It was not intentional, and I don't really think I did because I think that they taught me a lot there. I learned a lot, and also they made me retire, which was the reason I got to see you and see your growth from preschool to fifth grade, which made my life complete. I mean, that was a weird thing.
I
And
sense
then
no ill will, yeah. I sense no ill
yeah,
will.
no, no,
No.
no. And then
No, not at
Relx
all.
is like Relx was the company I learned, the big company, because I always want to work for a big company and actually enjoy it. And I did. And that was and that would be the thing I would thank them for. I learned how to interact. I mean, in the beginning, I was a rough person because I knew everything. What was it, the quote you were saying? Because we were right. I wrote a bunch of this down.
Bad news does not get
It,
better with time. Is that what you're talking about?
no, no, no. The one thing that I learned is I learned that I didn't know everything. Shocker. I know, you know, and that if I shut my mouth and I listened, that I actually learned stuff. And I learned a lot that way. And I got that ability. And I learned that at Relx by listening to people and going beyond thinking. I mean, the worst thing is when you're an entrepreneur and you're this. You've got to figure everything out. You got to fix it all and all that kind of stuff. And you got your team that does it. When you move into a multinational, dude, you don't know what transfer pricing is from Europe to here. You have no idea. Shut up. You don't know millions of things that everybody in that company does. And so when you listen and learn, you can go like, wow, what are the pain points? And that's your opportunity for new business ideas. I mean, it's just like, and most people, as long as you're not a dick and you're pretty friendly, and if you're doing well, we were doing well for them. They were willing to open their doors and let us talk to them and ask them about numbers and ask them all sorts of stuff. And I was just like, wow, this is it was cool. It was good.
Yeah.
It was a good place.
The quote
You
you were
know?
looking for is really simple. It's just try listening.
Yeah,
Try
because that's
listening.
it. That's what I would say is like, when all else fails, try listening. I think that's good.
I think that's a fantastic note to leave off on as well. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, as always, thank you guys for listening. Recordofmyfather.com and the Spotify, Record of My Father, which you're probably just listening to this on. And then we also have an RSS feed at recordofmyfather.com in case you don't have Spotify. And then we also have the YouTube channel, which you can watch the first, I think it is 45 episodes for free without having to have Spotify. So thank you guys so much. And Yeah. Would you have any
Anybody in the field that has a question, please shoot us the questions. We'll answer them on the next episode.
Yep, you can comment questions in on the Spotify actually and on the probably posts that we're gonna make on social media.
Yeah,
So
wonderful.
yeah, be easy everybody and have a great weekend.